Hello and welcome back to Pandemic Playground with Dave. So today we have another experiment for you guys. After making our motorcycle, our two-wheelers, now it's time to make our one-wheelers, our monocycles, and maybe a unicycle. So let's take a look. Alright, so I quickly modified this motorcycle here to have a hinge with a curved block here. So it kind of makes a bit of a kickstand. Nothing crazy about that. But today's experiment, we already had successfully made two-wheelers, motorcycles, and I guess we can call them bikes. But now it's time to test if we can make monocycles or unicycle or one-wheelers, as we can call it. So, I mean, I believe feasibly with two gyros set up the same way, we could potentially run it with one wheel. But of course, we want to check it out and see if it's even possible. So I made a few little builds to see if it worked out or not. And of course, we have our nicely set up garage with our door number 1 to 4 and the special one here. So let's take a quick look at door number 1. Right, so door number 1 housed this monocycle or one-wheeler system, and it is actually running off of a very large wheel. It's a 5x5 wheel here, and it's similarly connected by one suspension on one side and not the other, just for design purposes, very much like the one-wheeler rover that I made. And it has these pistons just to make it stand up straight when I needed to, but most importantly, it's the same setup with the gyros. So you have one active gyro with override to kind of get that balance where you can pitch it or roll it left and right without any issues. So let's take this thing for a spin. So in order to take it for a spin, we gotta take off the piston, or at least reverse it or retract the pistons. And you see here I can tilt it left and right without any problems. It's a bit slow because of how big it is, but because of the gyro system, the way it's set up, you can easily move it around. You see back and forth, left and right, and you can pretty much turn it pretty well too. So it doesn't pose much of a problem at all. And this thing drives really quick and great at the same time. So if you want to take it out for a test drive, you do have to kind of pitch it downwards a bit when you're driving forward, because it just keeps on going up like this, jitters a bit. So let's go full speed. As you see here, it does go backwards a bit, so just gotta keep going forward, and we can quickly reach close to 100 meters per second in this rover as well. So we're gonna just keep going, and look at it. It moves really great. It's glued to the floor for the most part, and it just drives pretty nicely. So we can turn a little bit. Of course, when we're turning, we want to tilt it a little bit to the left or right, depending on which side you're tilting, so you don't scratch the floor like I did just before. And it's not too bad. You can also jump this thing if you like, as you see there. Just holding my X or the jump button and then letting go. We just fly up a little bit, and we have some suspension to kind of just land, and it's not too bad. Can you quickly turn this thing? Yeah, you can, but it can potentially break. Because it tilts over using the monocycle here, or the one-wheeler. So this is a bit of a success, not too bad. I didn't have to put too much batteries. I put probably 5 batteries, maybe 5 batteries, 5 small batteries, and that's more than enough to power this thing for, as you see in the bottom, for one day with it going max speed. So this is a pretty perfect and great little vehicle you can make. Save on parts if you like by adding only just one wheel instead of 4-wheel rovers. So very fun to make. So let's move on to the next build that we have. Alright, so door number 2 is a bit of a different kind of vehicle, and it is pretty much this thing here. Yes, it's pretty much a unicycle in a way. Very hard to balance, as you see here. It is made of one wheel, which is the modded wheel, the bike wheel mod that I use on the with the motorcycle build. You'll see here there's a battery. It also has an antenna, and it should have a remote control right here in the front, so you can control it with your, I guess your Wi-Fi or your internal antenna or your personal antenna. So it's powered by one battery there, and of course this is not possible without the two gyroscopes. And it's a bit hard to control, as you can see here. Hopefully that doesn't make you too dizzy. But you see here, I gotta lean left and right. And of course, when you go forward, it leans backwards a bit. So you gotta pitch it forward. So, not the greatest vehicle in the world. But, I mean, it was a fun little thing to try out to see if it works. And you can pretty much jump this too, I believe. Nope. Nope, can't jump this. Because it's the way it's set up, I believe it's currently like kind of upside down in a way. So this thing, it runs okay. It's not the best thing in the world because, as you see here, you gotta balance it out a little bit, which is it's kind of its true form of a unicycle. But it leans a little too much to the left and right. Haven't really adjusted too much of that. Generally, my gyroscopes are set at override at 0, so I can just turn it around like this. But this thing can drive pretty okay too. So I'm pretty sure we can potentially get to top speed with a little bit of maneuvering with the controls. They gotta pitch or roll. You gotta roll left and right a little bit, and then pitch forward a bit. But then once you get the speed, you pretty much get a nice little balance. And it looks like I'm not getting top speed because I don't think I've... Ooh, case. Slowing it down, not the greatest thing in the world. Alright, so I gotta change the wheel settings to have... the speed limit. Unlimited is not the greatest, and once hit 360, that actually becomes unlimited. So I have been having to do 359.9 just to get that, 100 meters per second. And we probably want to change a little bit of the friction. Let's just say 40% so we can stop better. Alright, so we're back up. We want to hit top speed and see if that's even possible. So yeah, hopefully it's not too dizzying like maneuvering this at first, but once you get at a decent speed, you should be okay, or not. So I'm at 70, close to 80. Yep, 80 now. We're still on the floor, which is good. It's a bit wobbly on the floor, on the wheels, but we're hitting... we're gonna hit 90? Potentially. Yep, we hit 90. And we're probably not gonna hit 100. But as you see there on the bottom wheel, it's freaking out. But it works, for sure. You can turn this thing a little bit and drive it backwards, I guess. Oh, it's a bit of controlling. And we're trying to reverse and stop here. And there you go. So the gyroscope power is a little too much. That's why it's wiggling so much. So if I went crazy with my mouse, it just does that. So ideally, you probably want to change the power a bit. So our active gyro without the override, we can reduce that. Let's just say 40%. I think that might work. That's 40%. So it slowly maneuvers now instead of wobbling too crazy. But I think sometimes you might need the crazy power just to maneuver, by the way it goes so fast. And you see here, I'm leaning a little right. I gotta keep correcting it. So that's a pain. And yeah, I looked into suggestions that, yeah, maybe use a kind of gravity aligner script on here. I actually did give it a try, and it didn't really work for this build, at least. This unicycle. It actually can't keep itself up on its own for some reason. So you have to kind of maneuver yourself or do it manually. Not sure if it's just something I did wrong, but that's my experience with it. So it's unfortunate. But yeah. Look at the wheel on this thing. It's freaking out like crazy. But anyways, this was a fun little build too. Bit of a unicycle. Is it possible? Yep, it definitely is. Oop. Oop. Just hit two things. And this thing's almost indestructible, it seems. Been hitting things and nothing's happening really. But this was again, this is a fun little vehicle. Very pointless to be honest, but it works. It's a little hard to control, but again, a fun little thing to build and ride around with. Alright, so now we're gonna go on to door number 3, and that, of course, making anything with wheels, we want to test out if it can be set up as a hovercraft. Just like the two-wheelers, I had to figure out if you can actually do any hovercraft situation, but with just one wheel. What I did here is basically put a one wheel here. It's a 3x3 wheel, and it's of course like kind of upside down, so the flat part's facing the ground. I put a bit of half blocks on the bottom to kind of cover it, so you don't see it, with the batteries as well. And of course you have thrusters going backwards, forwards, and left and right. And of course the famous 2 gyro system and a lot of batteries for the thrusters. This thing here actually floats pretty well, as you see here. It's not too bad. But of course you can see the gyro system there. You have one that's active and the other one's override active. So yeah, as you see here, we don't even stop for whatever reason because we're pretty much floating, as you see there. If you're not looking at the wheel itself, it's a pretty compact hovercraft that I made here, which isn't too bad. And in terms of testing this drive, I think it goes pretty well. This thing drives really, really well too. Like the other hovercrafts, they glide pretty well without any issues. The only problem I have is the bit of a grinding on the bottom because I made those half blocks there, and it can potentially break as I'm just talking about it. But as you see here with thrusters, look how fast we can go. We hit 100 meters per second like almost instantaneously, and we didn't even turn off our front brakes, which is our backwards thrusters. And of course, that is the biggest problem I have by putting all those blocks on the bottom, causing all those crashing and everything like that. So yes, you can make a one-wheeler hovercraft. It is possible. Definitely is doable, as you see here. I'm able to freaking glide really quickly. Oh, it just bounced a little bit for some reason. And yeah, 100 ms or meters per second almost instantaneously. It's slow. It's not 100, but it's close. And everything's just tearing off. It's like the skirts are falling off of this hovercraft for whatever reasons. And of course here you see here I can turn left and right easily with the gyros, and of course the thrusters if I had it still existing, to be honest. It looks like I just tore off my left and rights, and now we only have our front and backwards. So that's gonna be a bit harder to maneuver to put it back inside of the garage, so we can leave that here to just roam around. Alright, so that pretty much concludes so far a 5x5 one-wheeler unicycle using the bike wheel mod. Link in the description below if you want to use that mod. I linked it in the previous experiment as well. And of course the last thing I want to do is try a smaller version or smaller wheel, which a 3x3. So I created this guy. Alright, so what is this? It's a monocycle, not a unicycle per se, a one-wheeler system that looks like a frog. My intention was not to make it look like a frog, but it just ended up looking like a frog. What I did is the same thing with the 5x5, but this time it's a 3x3 wheel, as you see here. It's connected by one suspension, and I pretty much did this curve initially, put a platform here to have a seat and the gyros, and then eventually it kind of looked like a frog, so I kind of just designed it a little bit more to actually be a frog. So this thing works really well as well because of the gyro system over there, the active gyro and the override gyro, and this thing drives really good as well. So as you see here, even though we have a bit of the blocks on the bottom, we can drive pretty fast. As you see here, we're at like 60, 70 almost. We should be able to get to 100 meters per second pretty quickly. We don't need to pitch it too much, but you do have to do it once in a while in terms of the left and right, and also downwards, so you can get more speed out of it. And as you see here, it almost looks like it's gliding. It's pretty well made in terms of the driving experience, and you can turn with the gyro system too, as you see here. You can turn without the gyros a bit, but not too much. So as you see in the front, we can turn it left and right a little bit. It doesn't turn too much, so that's the unfortunate part of this kind of build. I'm driving forward, turning left now, and it's only moving a little bit diagonally. So you definitely need to have the gyro system to turn it left and right here. The cool part about this, since it looks like a frog, jumping it looks pretty fun as well. As you see there, it just hops a little bit. So you can hold the X button or whatever the jump key is for your controller. If you on the Xbox, as you see here, look at that. You can make this thing hop all you want. And it's pretty much a little bit of a frog build here. Alright, so this one's a fun build. I'll leave a link in the description below for the workshop of this one. If you guys are interested in the kind of like prototype, the unicycle and everything like that, let me know. I may put those in the workshop as well. But I was scouring around the workshop again, as I always do. And I came across something similar to this build that I made. Just because I wanted to see if there was any kind of builds in the workshop that are kind of similar. And I came across this little guy here. Alright, so this was found in the workshop. It is pretty much called a frog, parentheses, vanilla. So this was made by Rony Dude. And I'll leave a link down in the description below if you want to play around with this guy. Really nice looking build, to be honest. You have a frog looking chassis. You have the cameras for an eye. And pretty much this thing leaps forward using this funky little thing in the back. There's a rotor, timer, and this bit of a stick. So I added the seat on top, to be honest. It was initially created without it, so we can remove that. And basically, you press this button on top. So hit the button, and it should start hopping. There you go. As you see here, it hops and it sticks out a bit of a stick there. You can probably ignore that, but that's the way that's how it's hopping. And if you put a seat there, you could just to hop with it, which is pretty awesome. In compared to my one-wheeler build that looks like a frog, this one, of course, tops that, to be honest. And it's a really fun-looking thing to have around. But we'll leave that hopping around. And of course, the very last thing I have is a special build. It's not really a special build. It's pretty much my frog build included with some thrusters. Alright, so I always leave this last door for, special builds. Just to bump it up a bit. I really like this frog build that I accidentally made. And I said, you know what? Why not throw some thrusters on there and see what happens? So it's the same exact build. And plopped on some thrusters on his shoulders. And this thing works really well in terms of speed. So if we wanted to go quick, we can go get there in seconds. As you see here. We should hit 100 meters per second in no time there. And of course, if you really wanted to, you can kind of fly this thing up a bit. As you see here. It's a little too heavy, but it's not going to do it. So you can probably jump it a bit just to get that height. And it looks like I'm just destroying everything on here. I guess you can't really fly too well. But yeah, this thing drives fast. It's quick. But the only problem is everything just tends to break on it. It looks like we have very little left on there. Again, not the most special build in the world, but I thought I had fun with it and just throw on some thrusters just to give it a fun little speed to it and see what happens. Alright, so as you can see here, monocycles do work. One-wheelers works perfectly fine as long as you have the correct gyro system set up. And again, that's having one gyro that's active on and another gyro that's on but with override on it, so that you can swerve it left and right with it and without any issues. Without it, it's gonna get stuck. So you definitely need those two gyro systems there. And of course, I'll link this little guy onto the workshop so you can have that and play around with it. I did create the shoulders here so you can add the thrusters without any issues. Or if you want to add any other things on here, you can do so, as you see there. Alright, so monocycles, one-wheelers are doable. fun experiment. So hopefully that intrigues you guys to build your own monocycles or one-wheelers too. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and feel free to leave us some comments. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.